we notice when it comes to rededicating the house of the Lord in ancient times that Ezra, the scribe, stood on a wooden dais erected for the purpose. In view of all the people, since he stood higher than all the people, he opened the book. And when he opened it, all the people stood up. And we have here the reading and also the explanation of the law, Nehemiah giving the interpretation. This is something which is embryonically indicating the importance of the first part of the sacred liturgy. The ambo, the pulpit, should be a place of honor, and even its place slightly higher than the people does give it more authority, and therefore authority also to the preacher. One looks at the way in which that was honored over the Christian centuries in our old churches. Great care oftentimes was given to the glory of God, specifically in the proclamation of the word in a well-constructed pulpit. And in some places on the continent, the pulpits were places of honor given, for instance, at the great churches of the continent to the greatest preachers of all time. In Lent, the sermon was important, and on it would go. And that's understandable in the context of a society where there was little else, and therefore the great preacher coming to town was a big event, and his words were listened to carefully, and he could sway crowds. Indeed, my brother years ago was telling me how in Wales, in the society that we grew up in, becoming a preacher was one of the avenues of a career. Not that one went in for that, but it was an outlet for human talent as well, on a par with that of the present day television or theatre, or, alas, sports field. Be that as it may, the first part of the liturgy is important, and glory is to be given to God in the house of God by a careful use of that first half of the encounter of the people of God with its God and with each other. The second part, according to the teaching given to us by the Council Fathers, should be in parallel, and it is fitting that the structure of the altar, the mensa, the place of encounter, sacramentally, should be of a similar structure and a counterpart of that of the Word. And that one does see in well thought out reconstructions in the last years. People do tend to find that the altar and the place of publication of the Word are in parallel, the same material. And it is important that the same care be given to that. It is not as though the Word were more important and that the other one was an appendix. That happens in some cultures. But that point there, it has a different dynamic. And as indicated by the teaching of Joseph Ratzinger, already before he became Supreme Pontiff, the dynamic at that point is quite different, and therefore the eye contact is not there and does not need to be there. The people are going with the priest at that point in the same direction, and they don't want to meet the priest in the same way at that point. His role is a mystagogue, not that of an entertainer or a DJ. From that point onwards, the offertory, there should not be dialogue on a human level at all. The encounter is only in God. And a good celebrant who has the ars celebrandi, that art of celebrating, which was dear to Joseph Ratzinger, should be genuinely a person who is able to suggest the beyond, the other, the holy other, by his whole comportment at the altar. His role at that point is to disappear and let the people have an encounter with the one they've come to meet. And it's not him. And the wider context is that of the church itself, the building. This is the anniversary of the dedication of the cathedral of this diocese. It was built with the money of the poor in those terrible years of the war and dedicated with great solemnity. It has certain elements coming from the early church, mosaics resembling those in the apse of many a Paleo-Christian church in Rome. And Christ is its Lord. It's the only cathedral in this land dedicated to Christ the King. And he reigns in a very oriental way from the apse. He is the Pantocrator, the teacher, the one with authority, given of course in his name to the bishop. And much grace has passed in that cathedral. Bishop Smith, who's now retired, ordained a huge number of young men, huge number over the years. And fortunately, the cathedral has not been touched. It's been honoured. The minimum has been done to make adaptations, but essentially it is as it was. Even the altar rail is still there and still used. And that is how it should be. One respects the work of those who've gone before us and the love they had for their king. I had here some years ago an Italian nun who was trained in architecture and in history, and she was horrified that in Ireland one parish priest could have so much power of destruction, whereas in Italy the state itself puts a brake on big changes, because they're also part of the heritage of the whole country, state and church working together to preserve that magnificent heritage. Therefore we respect even the physical structure. There is in the diary of St. Faustina a passage where she is passing in a train various churches, and she is given to see how the angels of each church salute her own guardian angel and vice versa. And going into one church, she is completely overwhelmed by its august mystery and beauty and suggestiveness, and hears in her heart the Lord saying this is how he wished it to be, that a church should have that effect. It is therefore not the house of man, but the house where man meets his God. It's the house of man also insofar as the poor people of the centuries have built them, where man can have consolation, because they belong to all. And in Ireland, fortunately, the churches are still open throughout the country in the day. And it should be so. And many graces pass when little people come at odd moments to meet their King in the secrecy of adoration. In Ireland too, fortunately, the tabernacle usually is still in the middle. It does help, for it is the throne of the High King. It is important, however, to remember that the Lord indicates when talking to the Samaritan woman that the Father is looking for worshippers who worship him in spirit and in truth, and that the essential temple is that of our own heart, where the Lord sacramentally seeks hospitality. And therefore there is a resonance when the heart is clean and pure. But even if it is not, it can plead for mercy, and coming out of confession, it has encountered truly the divine and has been made bright again. Remembering how in the Gospel, when the disciples are sent into the holy city, they have to prepare the place for the Last Supper. But they are told that they will find a place already garnished. The upper room is already furnished. When we come to our celebrations, we have to be ready. Things have to be in place, and there has to be a calm mode. Therefore, the insistence of the Church still officially that there should be silence in the sacristy is to be maintained, for one can't go from a conversation in the sacristy to a conversation with the High King just like that. One is the antechamber of glory and has to be treated as such. To be borne in mind then that these places are extra-territorial and are the property of heaven and must be treated accordingly. If there we bring loud noise and applaud each other, we have missed completely the point and taken away from the High King what pertains only unto him.
Christus